Hey, it's Dallas.
Jay.
Chris. Let's talk about it.
All right, so we wanted to talk about what is an index and what is the one that we like the most and the one that we like to follow. So for that, let's go, Chris.
What's up, guys? As you guys know, there are tons of indexes that you guys can follow when it comes to just trying to get a broad general view of market performance and how stock markets act in any certain time period. One thing that I think is crazy, I'm just going to throw this out here right away, in doing a little research on the topic, there are over 5,000 indexes that are used for the United States stock market.
Just equities.
Just equities. That's it. 5,000.
Over 5,000.
Oh, well, yeah. Over 5,000.
That's
Approximately
insane.
5,000. It's ridiculous.
So if you have an investment style, there's an index for you.
Pretty much, yeah. So it's mind blowing to me, and you know, for someone who's just trying to, you know, kind of figure out what index should you be paying attention to, you have 5,000 choices to choose from. So now, obviously, we have, you know, the three most common ones: the Nasdaq Composite, the S&P 500, and the Dow 30. Dallas, I mean, I think the Dow Jones is probably the most quoted index. It's what you see when the news, right before news breaks goes to commercial. What do you think about the Dow 30 as an index?
So we have to answer the most important question first. It's, do you say index or indexes or indices? I'm an indices guy.
I'm indexes for sure.
Indexes, I don't like indexes.
Yeah, I'm arrogant and pompous.
Are you secretly British?
Yeah, right.
So the Dow. Well, first, again, second first. You have to say that you can't invest in an index directly.
Correct.
Right. So all of these are just reference points that someone or some company has created, and they all have different purposes and functions in mind. So the Dow 30. I don't know if it's the oldest, but it's one of the oldest indices that we have in the United States. And it was created in a really logical way. Let's take one share of every company, put it into a basket, or top 30 companies, put it into a basket, and it'll give us the average share price for the stock market, right? That's kind of the idea of the Dow when they started it. Well, if you know anything about investing, you can see that this is going to create some problems. One, not all companies have the same number of shares, have the same value. So when you're looking at the Dow Jones, it's not a reflection of exactly the value of the companies. It's a reflection of the value of the shares of the companies. So as time went on, they thought, hey, this isn't a great system. It's not really as relevant as we thought it was going to be. So they introduced a denominator to the index that would roughly make all the share sizes equal. So what I'm saying is if company A has 2,000 shares and company B has 1,000 shares, you take one share from each, then you have to divide it by some number so that it would be like taking one share from A and two shares from B. I may have said that backwards. I don't know. But you get the picture. So
Equal, so we have to make them equal.
yeah.
Right.
So I think people don't understand that when they're going in and looking at the Dow. And there's a little bit of a misnomer. Hey, the Dow's up 5%. My portfolio should be up 5%, whatever the time period is. When that's really not true, even if you own the 30 stocks that are in the Dow. So is that making sense? Any holes in that logic? Did I cover it all?
No, it totally makes sense. So I guess that asks the next question then. So what makes the Nasdaq different, right? And what makes the S&P different? So I'll take the S&P real quick. So with the Dow, they're trying to make all the stocks even. With the S&P, they're trying to take the top 500 companies, which interestingly is more than 500 stocks. But that's a whole nother thing. Or do I have that backwards?
No, that's right. Yeah, it's 500 companies, somewhere between
500 plus.
505, 507 stocks.
It's a weird thing. But either way, that one is truly trying to represent more of what the U.S. stock market is doing. So a little bit different approach than, when was the Dow created? Like in the 20s or something? It was a
I'll fact check
time
it.
ago. He's fact checking while we do that. But in which case, the S&P is trying to more show what is the movement of the U.S. market. And so a little bit different. Anything you want to add to that? Are we good with that definition?
No, I think that's pretty right. And when it comes to the Nasdaq composite, Dallas, you might be able to fact check me on this one, but the Nasdaq's going to be comprised mostly of technology stocks. There are some companies that are not based in the United States that are associated with the Nasdaq Composite Index, and there are subsectors that go into the Nasdaq. It's not 100% technology based, but when you look at the Nasdaq, you're pretty much looking at the technology sector, right?
That was why the Nasdaq was created, to help technology companies go public originally back. I don't want to throw out dates because I feel like I'm going to get them wrong. So. But okay, here's the Dow Jones. This is crazy. Dow Jones, second oldest index in the United States. It was first calculated May 26th, 1896.
Wow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's way before I would have thought.
Yeah.
Well, so what's the oldest index?
I don't know.
Oh, you don't have it? Darn.
So that might explain a little bit more of why it's only 30 stocks, though. If it's that old, how many publicly easily traded companies were there,
Yeah.
Maybe
I don't think there were a lot when it was created. Like I really think it was close to every stock that you could buy. The one before it was the Dow Jones Transportation Average.
Okay.
So probably more around railroads.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which makes sense back in the 1890s. So yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so I think that's a pretty good, definition of what each of the, let's call them major three indexes are. So, and you made the statement that I want to go back to. So if the Dow is up 5%, then my portfolio should be up 5%, right? That's not, that logic doesn't really carry over though.
Right. So every index, I know I used the Dow as the original example, has a denominator. So even the S&P 500 has a denominator. Because the S&P is a market cap index, the denominator is going to be closer to 1. But anytime there's a stock split, some kind of corporate action, they have to do an adjustment to the index. So, as we all know, if you have a fraction, then the top number moving versus the bottom number is going to create kind of a leverage effect. So the indexes aren't, I messed up, should have said indices, but the indices...
You've been hanging out with Jay and I too much.
I know, you're converted me. The indices are not levered. They don't use any type of borrowing. They're just a calculation. But functionally, they can act levered. So even if you own the exact 30 stocks in the Dow Jones, you might not have the same exact performance as the index.
There's another big difference whenever someone's looking at their portfolio compared to even the S&P, let's say, in which case most people aren't 100% stock. So even if the market is up 5%, well, hopefully you are diversified outside of the index to begin with and probably have some sort of fixed investment in there too. So let's say that would only affect, if you're a 60-40 investor, 60% of your portfolio.
And if you have, and even in that case, it's probably less because you probably have some international.
Right.
So S&P 500 is only U.S. companies. If you have anything international, it's not going to be reflected in that index.
Well, and like Jay was saying, the S&P 500 is solely large cap companies. You're probably diversified in some mid cap exposure, some small cap exposure, and things like that. So, I mean, again, the S&P is not the end all be all. So,
what do y'all like to look at?
I look at the S&P 500. I think it's broad enough. I don't want to say, I mean, would you agree that in a portfolio, you're probably going to be weighted towards large cap more than any other sector? Is that a fair assumption, I would say,
On the equity side.
on the equity side? So that's why I think the S&P 500 makes the most sense. As long as you explain to the client that, look, like we were just saying, just because the S&P is up 1%, your portfolio is not going to be up exactly 1%. So I'd say S&P 500.
What about you? I'll go last.
I use a combination of S&P and Nasdaq. Like those are the two I look at. I couldn't even tell you where the Dow is today or any day.
Yeah.
So, and then I think that's interesting. So Chris works with a lot of advisors, so he's trying to coach them how to work through client stuff. Dallas works with advisors, but strictly in investments. So you're really focused more on U.S. market. With me, I do a lot of in-person with the clients, and so I actually do track the Dow. I want to know what it's doing because that's what everybody's looking at. So, all right, I might as well know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm looking at actual investment performance, I'm usually going to benchmark it against the S&P because I feel like it's more fair.
What, and this question can be for both of you guys, although I think your answers will probably be the same. What are you using for outside the U.S.? You know, we've talked strictly about U.S. equities, but what about outside U.S.?
So
Put you on the spot.
no, well, I know the answer. I just what I would say is MSCI ACWI X US, and then I realized no one's going to know what that means.
Right.
So,
no, that's fair. I set
And
you
now
up.
I'm trying to
Set
see
you up
if
for
I
that
can
one.
remember what it means. But Morgan Stanley, I don't know what the rest of that part is, but All Country World Index, removing the United States, ex-US. That's what I use for foreign stuff.
And while Chris is looking up what the acronym is, I don't track international. So I just defer to Dallas. He's my numbers guy.
So why do we even look at indices at all as an investor? Why should our clients look at them, or should our clients not look at them?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think it's a way to, track the general performance, as long as you're not looking at the Dow 30, the general performance of the stock market as a whole on any given day. What do you think, Dallas or Jay?
So that's
a great question.
That made me take a step back.
Yeah.
Why are we? Because my first gut reaction is the same as you, right? Like, well, it's to track performance. Are we performing well? Are we not? But in the end, are we investing strictly for performance? Are we investing for something different? That's a good question.
Yeah.
I have a totally different take.
Okay.
We all look at performance. We all look at the number, how much is up, how much is down. But the reason I benchmark is for risk. That's what we, as advisors, can do. We can't create performance. No one can promise your client higher performance. But we can tell our clients that we're going to understand the risk that they're taking on in their portfolio, and we're going to make sure that it stays within their risk tolerance. That's the bulk of what we do, right? So you have to have a basket of stocks. You have to have an index that you can look at and determine if you've taken on more or less risk than that index blended out for kind of what your portfolio looks like. That's why I index. I look at standard deviations, but the news doesn't show that.
And that's why I hired Dallas to hire.
Right.
My money.
Exactly. That's a great point, though, and definitely not something to be lost. That makes total sense.
So it's Morgan Stanley Capital International.
Yeah,
MSCI.
I just realized the link that I clicked on doesn't even have it. I'm just looking at a fact sheet of the MSCI World SUS. So I'm not a very good fact checker.
Yeah, so one last reminder, you cannot invest directly into any index, right? So you have to find some sort of ETF or mutual fund, even get close. Right.